Yeah, well, just in regards to the lover, you see, he's the individual who now understands that he is the embodiment of the order of the cosmos and that he is equal with God because God is an embodiment of that equality, or I mean that order, right? Now, how do the two connect? What is that spark? Well, that spark is in our minds every day. So, because in the posthumanism talk, I was talking about Wilhelm Reich and about bioenergy, and then we get onto the subject of the listener and the speaker. And that's what we are. Every single person is, at the very basic, a duad. You know, one could even go to the level of a quaternity, a trinity, a quaternity, but I like to keep it simple. We are a duad. Each person in their own head hears a speaker, and then there's a listener. And occasionally the listener part of us speaks too. So, and the speaker can also listen. But just to make it very simple, there's a duad, right? What we don't understand is that the speaker, who's creating all the noise, right, who's asking all the questions, who's busy, the main part of the dialogue of our mind is what I call the speaker. It's just as simple as that. And that speaker is the ego. There's nothing wrong with the ego, it's who we are. And that ego faces the world. It has the challenge of living and going through experience, right? That's that lover again with his arms crossed. The listener part of us, though, we imagine that it's us. Now try to follow this. If you meet somebody in the street, you're walking up to somebody, they stop you to ask directions or something, imagine how it would feel if that person spoke to you in your own voice. It would be a very, very unsettling and uncanny experience if they spoke in exactly the voice that we associate with our own being and expressed through the vocal cords, right? We'd find that really, really weird. Okay, well, something of the reverse is going on. Because the voice in the head, that is the listener, speaks to us in a voice we recognize as ourselves, we think it is ourselves. But that is obviously patently, logically lunatic, because the voice in our head is not going through the vocal cords. So why do we associate the voice in the head with ourself? It's because it speaks in a well, this is an illusion we've created, right? The voice in the head is not using vocal cords, so it's an actual fallacy. That voice that's speaking to us, giving us the answers, the listener part of us, is not ourselves at all, which can be easily worked out, because we are only imagining that it speaks in the voice that we associate with, ourselves. But this can easily be shown to be fallacious. So then who is that voice? The voice in our heads, that is the listener, is the God voice. But that God voice sits so close to us, as people like Tennyson said, nearer is he than breathing, and closer than hands and feet. And that voice of God within our heads has chosen, by sleight of hand, for its own good reasons, to speak as us. It's like a dance. Remember at the end we showed the hermaphrodite, two bodies in one? Now, because that voice of the listener speaks in what we mentally conceive as our own voice, we carry on in daily life imagining that we are this syzygy that's speaking and listening. But the voice of God is right there in our minds on a daily basis, every single second of the day, counseling the ego, listening to what the ego is saying about what it wants to do and its desires and all of these other things. That's the child, that's the lover in his child mode, in the Cupid mode, right? But it has walking with it, side by side, every minute, this other voice that we mistake as being the voice of the self, when it's in fact the voice of God. But it speaks to us in a voice, a mental voice that we associate with ourselves. And this is why then most people, don't understand or comprehend the identity of the actual voice in its head. Now, the reason why that voice speaks to us in a non-foreign voice has many, reasons which we haven't got time to go into now. But the very fact of the matter is, it's just a working illusion. Once we understand that we are on a moment-by-moment, daily basis, communing with the voice of God, it is our guide, it is there in our heads, it cannot not be in our heads. Now, what we can do is the ego can break down. The ego can become neurotic, as you see in the cases of, say, schizophrenics, when there's a whole breakdown of what I'm talking about, and then that voice and other voices, appear to be foreign voices speaking in other tongues. And then people find that a very uncanny experience, and it drives them insane or whatever, that whole syndrome. But that's just a manifestation of a breakdown where the ego itself has become alienated from the guiding voice within. Now, the mystic, what he tries to do is he understands what I'm talking about, and that God is not remote, God is not far away, and God is not superior or higher. God is speaking with you every minute of every second of every day. But he does it in a way that doesn't draw attention to himself, because that's the way God works. He doesn't. No angelic force, no higher force is going to attract attention, because God is not working on the level of hierarchy. He's not trying to be the big boss. That's some shit we've inherited from the world and all these liars, these demiurgic agents.
Right.
And these perfidious creatures that William Blake and others tried to expose for us. So the spark is really a voice, an oracular voice, that if we learn to listen to it, more correctly, if we turn down our racket, the ego racket, this is like the kid smashing his toys around, if we try to turn that voice down a little bit, then the voice of God increases, the guidance increases, and then we get more into understanding who we're dealing with here, and we trust it more, and then, as I said, you enter into a relationship, and that's a whole personalistic thing. But it starts very simply. So what these priests and all have done, have inserted themselves as the guides. So you now turn outward to these people. It's like saying, yeah, you have faith in my faith. Okay, mate, get down on your knees. I'm the one with the faith, and we do it. So what we're doing is we are actually slandering. Like Aleister Crowley said it beautifully. If you don't listen to listen to any other guidance than the guidance of one's own guardian angel, is a slap in the face of that force. And he was absolutely right. And we slap that force every single day. Every single moment that we turn to these priests and their rotten churches and their black robes. And so the human race is never going to be free, because all we've done down through the centuries is replace one tyranny with another. The mystic walks alone because he knows he's not alone. Right? He's got this dialogue going on. It's ontological. He cannot even get free of it. And if he tries to get free of it, like I said, if he tries to cut the cords, if he tries to, twiddle the knobs of the radio, he'll go insane, which is what schizophrenics and other people are dealing with. They have let the doctor become the authority. They've let the world become the authority. They have the voices of their bloody parents in their head going round and round and round, and every other kind of voice that you could imagine. It's a real mess inside of there. But see, here's another thing, is that no matter what we do, no matter how we sedate ourselves or try to find simulacras for this voice, that voice remains. This is the most incredible thing. The voice of the imperial self is the voice of God. So the only meditation that one needs to do is to realize that the speaker within you is you. That's the ego part of you. And it's the one that wants to investigate the world and is on its own little adventures and learnings and all of the rest of it. But it has within it the voice of God, the only God that exists. And it's only a matter of you having the requisite reverence and humility to come and voice it back up. But it's virtuous. It's a strength. It's a strong humility. It's not subservient. It's a working dialogue between two friends, one has to enter into that state and realize this and work through the illusion that just because that voice gives the impression that it's speaking with the voice that you associate with your vocal cords, once you've understood that that is a fallacy, you now have a totally different reverence with that other voice in your head that's been guiding you all along, and needs to be related with on a different level than what we're used to. This is key. We should have always added this, that the moment that you even start to conceive of this voice as higher, you're already in danger. We have to get rid of that programming, which is a legacy of these priests we've been talking about. I mentioned this, and I mean, these terms can be used, just as a vernacular, loosely. That's no problem. I do it myself, but it's the word that's better is deeper, purer, more wholesome. The more wholesome voice, the oracular voice, the inner zodiac, the inner oracle, the deeper voice. We can use these terms. Is better than higher and lower, because the higher and lower is an infection that has to get rid of, so that we can come to understand, because this voice works with us equally. And we get into all sorts of mental problems and emotional problems when we start thinking that we're hearing a voice of God or something in our head, from a higher point of view. And then you'll always know that you're dealing with mysteria. When somebody comes along and tells you that they're the voice of God and, God is speaking through them. I mean, there's not a single religious, nut on the face of the earth who doesn't tell you that God is speaking through him, right? So we have to be aware that, how to decode that and realize that, look, mate, I'm really glad to hear that God's speaking to you. Well, he's speaking to me too, so I really don't need to listen to what you have to say because he's speaking to me. You okay with that? Let's move on.